Hi, everybody. Welcome back to UnAnchored Boston with Bob Lobel. I'm your host, Mike Lynch. And as always, we are brought to you by Cold Springs RV, your destination for all things camping and wear. We're in New Hampshire, of course, and by the great George Gray. The big wheel, we call him, at George Gray's Lexington Toyota, 409 Mass Ave in Lexington. All right, before we get to our guest, the great Dan Shaughnessy, you're probably looking at Bob Lobel and say, what the heck happened to him and what truck did he run into? But all I'm going to say is golf is now a contact sport, and uh, explain yourself, as they say.
Well, it was just one of those accidents. I was going downhill and a little too fast, and the cart wasn't a regular golf cart. It's called a paragolfer, so it enables me to play. But, at least in a regular golf cart, you got two people and you got things protecting you. But in this cart, it's wide open and there's only one person. So you just go downhill, but I was going a little too fast. And what happened is I tried to slow it down and stop it, and I pressed the kill button, and it hit the front of the cart. I mean, it stopped immediately, and it tipped over all the weight going forward, and it hit the asphalt cart path, and then it flipped over and caught me on the head here. So, I know it's 5 stitches. They did a great job. CAT scan, the whole thing. Cleared for I could play next week. Concussion protocol was passed, and
In the blue tent?
I went to blue tent right away, right on the golf course. I set up a quick blue tent. Anyway, that's what happened. That's
X-rays. Is this where we say X-rays of your head showed nothing?
Yeah, that's one of those things. Yeah, that was probably why they let me go. So anyway, it's getting better. I can only say that, but so much has been going on with that involved Danny Shaughnessy, and so much has been happening in the last couple of weeks we started off with the Barnacles last week, and we got into the comeback, and we're going to talk about the comeback today. We got into Ron Perry. It's ironically, Dan, the day you wrote the column on Ron Perry Sr. and his passing, I saw Ron Perry Jr. right outside our market. Right, we kind of meet there every once in a while, and I hadn't seen him in almost a couple months. And just like and he shows up there the day after the column, so we had a great talk, and he appreciated. So I'm sure he got in touch with you. The Holy Cross guys have everybody else's number, including Dr. Fauci. I'm sure you could get Dr. Fauci if you needed to.
It's a secret society like those Harvard guys.
I get it. I know Groton, Yalta. I know you guys just are into that. It's all right, fine. But then there's the Louis Tiant passing, and the Hall of Fame. This is stuff that's happened since the last time we talked. There's Ronnie Perry. There was a World Series, in the Yankee explosion or whatever you want to call it, and then Kraft getting getting to the Hall of Fame. He's more interested in getting in the Hall of Fame than he is about building his football team. But okay, so there's how much, and you've got opinions on all these things, Danny. You really, and none of that we haven't. And Jim Montgomery talking about benching Pasternak. When the hell did you ever get into hockey? What was that? What's that all about?
Well, I actually that's the column that's online Friday, Saturday, Sunday print. But it got me interested because when I saw Pasternak bench for the whole period, it's such a hockey thing. You don't remember hearing that about Manny Ramirez or Larry Bird or Tom Brady. I mean, you don't bench your best guy, and even if in Manny's case he misbehaves or something, but in hockey they do it, and it's not a remarkable thing, except for one time, which I think both of you remember, when Steve Casper benched Cam Neely and Kevin Stevens. Stevens really didn't matter, but that was a big deal, and because the fans love Neely so much. So I went back and I talked to Harry, and Casper's in Slovenia, which I think they sent him there after he did this, but he's coached around the world, but he's never been back behind an NHL bench. He was 34 years old when that happened. And it's odd because the job that Harry had when Casper did it to Neely has that job now. And I was curious about the chain of command when if Montgomery in mid-game has to check upstairs, hey, I'm going to bench our best guy in the third period. You okay with that? But he said no. I mean, Neely didn't really want to talk to me, which is a common thing. But it was conveyed to me that Montgomery has the power to do that. And then I went back and called Harry, like, did Casper ask you if he could do that? And he said, yes, he did. I told him he could, because if you don't tell him that, you lose your coach. And of course, they did lose this coach a year later. He did make the playoffs. Neely had retired. Casper got fired. He was 35. He's never been back behind the bench. He's coached around the world, China, Russia,
Really? Oh, that's
Hungary. I mean, everywhere. And he's in Slovenia, some country I can't pronounce now. And so I couldn't get him. But it turns out that our good pal Rochi, that Casper was his mailman,
no.
Yeah, in
No.
Andover. Yeah, Rochi said during the pandemic, he's going out walking the dog, and the mailman says, "Hi, Rochi." And he's like, "Wait, that's Steve Casper?" And it was. So he went from benching Cam Neely to becoming Karl Malone. He was the mailman. And I just like that. It was good.
Yeah, that's there you go. There's stuff like that.
Cliff Caven on Cheers, right? He was a mailman, was he?
That's right. I was going to invoke that, but I've used my sitcom references for the decade. I went to Seinfeld on Make Love the Drake, Hate the Drake last week.
I love that column on
Thank
the
you, Mike.
Drake. Yeah, I really did. I didn't think he played as great as
No.
you thought he played, but
Well, that's why we had Hate the Drake in there too.
yeah, I know. I saw it, and then I halfway through the column, I said, "I bet the Drake Hotel is going to pop up at the end," and it did. But let's stay with the court. Well, actually, no. Let's go back to the Bruins thing. Any more on that, Dan?
No, that's the totality of it, and that exhausts the thimble of knowledge that I have about hockey right there. It's pretty tidy that's all I got. But I just thought as soon as I read that Pasternak thing, I'm like, that's such a hockey thing that in that sport you can bench your superstar and nobody thinks twice about it.
I thought about Malcolm Butler when I read that.
Yeah.
I thought about when was the last time we actually had a major benching of a guy? I mean, Pasternak is more important to the Bruins than Malcolm Butler was to the Patriots in the bigger picture, but not in that particular Sunday afternoon.
That's one of the enduring mysteries in Boston. Everyone takes to their grave.
Yep.
It's amazing how that thing has stayed unsolved.
Well, Lynchy, if you thought that line about the Drake Hotel was classic, there was nothing better when Danny wrote about that. This is like a Love Shaughnessy moment here. When he wrote about the raising of the banner and the Celtics 18th banner, and he talked about Kuzi being, both from Holy Cross and being such a great Celtic back in the days. And the line he called him the old man in the seas. I thought it was one of the great lines of all times.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. You knew we were headed there on that one, and that was an emotional night for everybody there. It was just nice to see. Bob Cousy's 96 years old, and he's in a wheelchair, and he's got all of his marbles, and he knows everything, and he's very current. And it was nice that they honored him by having him there. And Jeff Twist wheeling him around. Jeff Twist, the last guy hired by Red Auerbach, and I'm a softie for that sort of stuff, and I thought it was. And I like the Celtic lineage, tradition, history, because like Mike, we grew up with that. Mike, this is you and me. So
yeah.
It's evolved, Mike, to where it's just like when we were kids.
Yeah. The
Bruins, the Red Sox, and the Patriots are all bad, and the Celtics win the championship. And Army and Navy are in the top 25. It's just like the '60s all over again.
The one thing that stood out to me about that night, one absentee, and I don't know if he was ill or not, Satch Sanders.
Okay, I can tell you that. So Satch lives in, I think, Sturbridge. It's a community. It's healthy older people. And Satch's wife had a fall 2 days before, and that was regrets. They were going to have a car for him because Kuzi made one of the conditions. He wanted Maura Healey there. He wanted Satch there. And I think they would have thought of Satch anyway, because I mean, the last living guys from the dynasties of the '60s, they're it. And he was going to be there. They found out the day before he could not make it because his wife had a bad fall.
Okay, all right, good. I'm glad. That makes me feel better because we all feel the same about Satch.
We can segue two ways. We can segue from the Kuzi Holy Cross thing to Ronnie Perry Sr., or we can segue from that's the way hockey does things to the Baseball Hall of Fame and Louis Tiant. So you can pick your poison here, Dan, wherever you want to go.
It's just, the Ron Perry Sr., it was that was for me, that was an important column to do because, and people don't know who anyone is anymore, and I understand that. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of, maybe not your audience here, but like, who was Harry Aganis? This kind of thing. So when you lose an institution like that, and Ron Perry Sr. and Ron Perry Jr. never played a day in professional sports as baseball or basketball. They were drafted in both and got very close in both, but it didn't happen. But Ron Perry Sr., to have been a national champion, to win at Omaha, the College World Series in 1951, but it's the only Northeast school that ever won the thing. I mean, Maine hasn't done it. I mean, I don't know where the line is, but it's strictly them. In 1951, they had 3 pitchers. They pitched 7 complete games. He beat Missouri and Texas. I mean, imagine a New England college with 2,400 boys beating Texas in baseball and Missouri. So yeah, that's underrated. Then they won the NIT while he was the guard playing with Tommy Heinsohn and Togo Palazzi. And then he's at CM. He basically invents the CM, curriculum, sports, and this wonderful, honorable man, and arranges to play Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in high school. I mean, Power Memorial against Catholic Memorial. I mean, what a life! And I know he had Billy Travers, Skip Lockwood, big league pitchers, and Ted Williams recruited him to pitch batting practice to Ted Williams when Ted came back from Korea. Ron Perry was a young kid at Holy Cross and from Somerville. And then at Holy Cross, he oversaw, the athletic department for 25 years. And last time they beat BC, he was athletic director. And the whole decision not to get in the Big East, just a lot of things. And of course, his son, Ron Perry Jr., national punt packing champion and in the Orange Bowl when he's 8 years old and drafted by the Celtics, the last player Bill Fitch cut in 1981. Larry Bird always said he should have been on the team. But if you go to that Playboy All-America team, it's Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Ron Perry right there, Holy Cross. It just looks weird. And then he was drafted in baseball. He played in the White Sox system. And I talked to Tony La Russa about him when he was a young player. And they loved him. And he was traded for Jerry Koosman. All this stuff all around these guys. And they stayed in this community and had wonderful lives and careers. And Ron Perry Sr. had, 14 grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and a big West Roxbury family. And all the services were last weekend, but I wanted to honor that. I think it's important that everything didn't start last week, and so that was important to me to honor that.
I remember when he went to at the time, my dad was the basketball coach at St. John's Prep, and the Catholic Conference was pretty strong. I mean,
Sure.
Archbishop Williams, they had,
Zavarian,
Zavarian, St. John's Prep, St. Mary's of Lynn with Tony C.
Bosco,
So there was a new school opening up called Catholic Memorial. And I said, well, this is an automatic 2 wins. And my father goes, Ronnie Perry's going to be coaching that team. He said, oh, yeah, I remember him. Yeah, he's pretty good out of Somerville. And they said, and they got this guy named Ron Texera, who's pretty good too. And the rest is history, enough said. But there was, everyone seems to have had some sort of connection with the father or the son over the last more than half century.
Yeah, I talked to people who went to the wake in West Roxbury last Friday, and Ron Texera was there, and he looks great. I saw pictures, looks great. But the later team at CM, they're high school basketball royalty in this state. I mean, they have been a long time, but it starts with Texera playing against Lou Alcindor, and then of course in the late '60s they had 6 Division I players. Billy Rayner, who became a star at Dartmouth and a coach, and King Gaskins, who died tragically young and didn't have a good college experience. Franny Costello. I mean, they were just, those guys were everywhere and ongoing. So it really was. But I remember 1969, they won the state championship, 29-0 team. I think they beat a Springfield team in the Garden. And Peter Gammons did the game story. King Gaskins hit the shot to win. He was a freshman. So all this stuff, again, institution memory, which is what you guys are all about. There you have it.
When we had Ron Perry on, Junior, he said that every Saturday, without fail, for the last 30 years or so, at 12 noon, Ron Perry Sr. would call Ron Texera on the telephone. And no matter where he was, he got to a phone and called Ron Texera. And that's something.
The stories, Mike, they just can't, how these things go. With email, everybody has a story, and there are all these wonderful tales. A letter ran in the Globe this week about Mr. Perry in the elder living home, and he's helping this older woman who can't. She's gone blind. He's cutting her meat and taking care of her every day, and a the guy who played at St. Columbkilles, again, doesn't even exist anymore. It's in Brighton. They reached out to me. He had been on a debate team in 1961 for St. Call's. They were better than CM. There's a game like at 2 p.m, and he couldn't make the game because of his debate obligation. So Mr. Perry said, "Yeah, we'll play you at 3 or whatever. Like we'll start an hour later. Just get there when you can." And the guy comes in his debate tuxedo, which evidently he wore a tuxedo to debate in the 60s, and arrives at the CM gym in his tuxedo. Says, "Take your time." And years later, this man would see Mr. Perry and he'd say, "That was so nice of you to allow for me to play in that game." And Mr. Perry said, "That's what educators do." And again, they don't make them like that anymore.
Yeah.
Let me jump back to the comeback, and the comeback seems like a month ago.
Yeah.
When it came out, but we just had the Barnacles on last week, and it was such a fascinating show, as we all know, and for all kinds of reasons. But you were a big part of that show, Dan. There were certain events that happened in that show. I mean, I never thought that Veritek would make me cry, but actually it happened. I never, other scenes of Francona line about the analytics and what they could do with it, and you and Kevin Millar. First of all, the fascinating thing is being on the other side of the camera is where the hell did they get that video?
I think they had a boomstick over him. It was clear to them early on. ESPN, they used that in the 30 for 30s for that video first. I don't even remember being aware of it. There must have been a long reach or something, but we were standing in right field in foul territory during batting practice. But that was a weird night. They had lost 19-8 in Game 3 on Saturday, and people were throwing stuff at them, and it was a nightmare.
No, you called them frauds.
It was a hypothetical. I said if they continue this path, they will go down as the biggest pack of frauds. It was a hypothetical.
They would have, right?
And that was true then. It's true now. So Millar has a lot of fun with it. So it's a hypothetical. If I were 7'5", I'd have been in the NBA. So but I'm not. So I'm not. But in this case, but yeah. So he ran with it. But he was telling everybody that don't let us win tonight. And they had the boomstick everywhere he was. They must have had a mic on him too. But for my part, yeah, I wasn't aware. And then that came out, and it's had a long life. I call him every time someone's down 3-0. I call him when the Yanks went down 3-0 from New York last week, and I called him when the Celtics went down 3-0 to the Miami Heat in the conference finals 2 years ago. He's Mr. Patron saint of lost causes, and it worked that night. And we agree we should take this thing on the college circuit. Go around, make some money off it. Take it on tour. But he's full of beans in a lot of ways, but we love him anyway. He's good.
It was a fascinating bit. The whole thing, the production by the Barnacles. They really did a great job.
They did. I like the Grady Little portion of that. I hadn't seen.
Oh yeah,
a lot
right.
Of
That
Grady
too.
interview. Grady said if there had been an election of me and Bin Laden, I'd have lost. But he's got a certain way of putting things. It was another reminder. I mean, the comeback Netflix series. It's nice that you honored the Barnacle Boys who worked so hard on that, but it saddens me to see it because it just reminds you how far they've fallen, how great it was, and how far they've fallen. It also brings out the point that Lucchino was such a big part of that, and they haven't been the same since they bumped him to the curb, and now he's gone. And I know you guys had him on your program a year or two ago, and he was great then. He was always great, but absent him, I don't know that any of that good stuff happens. That brought a different dynamic that they've not had since they lost him.
See, now that you mention that, I can put on my Lucchino hat.
There you go.
There you go.
But I would. This is another thing I was going to try to morph into. Curse of the Bambino, Reversing the Coast, Francona, Seeing Red, and there were others. But I would ask you in those major ones, which was your favorite of all to do?
I kind of hate doing all of them because they're hard, and it's a very distressful time when you have a book due because I take those deadlines very seriously, and you go to bed thinking about it, you wake up thinking about it, and it's a bear. The Francona experience was really a fun experience because he was so much fun. He was so vested in it, and it was important. and we crashed that. We did it very quickly. It needed to be done quickly after he was fired, and they kicked him on the way out the door with all the Percocet abuse, the failed marriage, and but then the book got to #2 in the New York Times. I mean, we had a good bag of money for that book, so that was a very good experience. But I did a little book about when my son was in high school called Senior Year, which like educators and coaches and parents all like that book. It's a sweet little book, and everybody who read it liked it a lot. So that was kind of the closest to a fun experience. And of course, The Curse of the Bambino was just a great title, and it was all the dark history of the stuff that had happened to them. And then we kept adding to it. The thing got bigger every couple of years. More stuff would happen.
It sure did.
The book started out at like 207 pages. It ended up at like 245, and I'm still adding to it after the Aaron Boone thing. Like, to the point where in the last version of that book, I have Theo Epstein buying the book when he's in high school. So it's a meta book where the person in the book is buying the book earlier in incarnations of the book. So, but the title was it never went away, and the Red Sox adopted that as part of their mission statement and all the TV and The Curse of the Bambino. And that was the first time that phrase was used. And I got that from my editor, and she got it from her grandfather. And that thing never went away.
Do you think we're going to suffer the curse of Mookie Betts?
Well, that came up. I mean, it's always been out there, but then this 100-year thing was bizarre. When I started looking, I forgot that Betts' first year in the big leagues was 2014, which of course, Babe Ruth was 1914, and then they both win a World Series in 18, and then they both get dumped after 19, and then the Red Sox, it took 86 years to crawl out of that, and we're now on 6 and counting for these guys. So I don't think it's going to go 86 years, but there are some parallels there. And obviously Mookie Betts is not Babe Ruth, but the stupidness of not holding on to your best player or making a cash consideration the deal breaker, it haunted them, and they became very bad for a very long period of time after that.
You know what? Let's talk about the ultimate responsibility. If somebody were in a room of people, of whether it was John Henry, Tom Werner, the former general manager before Breslow, who would have to stand up and raise his hand and said, "I'm the one who made this deal"?
So that's John Henry. I mean, again, he wouldn't dispute that. I mean, when he bought the team, that was a condition of buying the team. He's the majority owner, principal owner, and the big decisions are his. He owns that. I mean, that, to me, there's never any question about those kinds of things. Anything huge like that, it goes through him. He can take recommendations and this and that, but when you're talking about, that was strictly a money proposition. I mean, they told us it was about baseball, but nobody believes that, and it wasn't. It was about money, and they made a decision, and they have to live with it.
I think all Red Sox fans want is to know that the people at the top care as much about the team, the winning and tradition, as the guy who sits in section 2 out in right field. And I don't think there's anything else.
Or as Billy Lowe or Derek Lowe would say, Billy from aisle 43.
No, it's true. You, Mike, you grew up here like me, and we've always, it is sort of a public institution. We know it's a private company, this and that, but it's a public trust in my view, and it's a stewardship, and you honor that by caring as much as your fans do. And they did. They honored that. They won 4 championships, and that's great. But I'm not talking about 2018 anymore, because it's no more relevant than 1918. It might as well be the Stone Age, because it's a different way it's run now. So we honor them for what they did. We appreciate what they did, but not getting any points for that now, because it's pivoted. And until it pivots the other way, that I think they're open to the criticism that people are aiming at them now.
I wanted you to clear something up for me, Danny, if you can. And it comes down to Francona, who we all loved, and on so many different levels. But I'll take the 3 people, Francona, Lucchino, and Theo. What was the dynamic at that time involving the 3 of them, and who ultimately was responsible for Francona leaving?
Well, I mean, it was sort of time with Francona leaving. I think, it had played its course. 8 years in Boston, those are like dog years. They age everybody, and so but he averaged 94 wins, made 5 playoffs, won 2 World Series, every capacity for 8 straight years. But I think that's John Henry and deciding it was time to move on. And even in the moment, I don't think there was nobody liked it particularly, but it felt like it had played out a little bit. It looked worse in retrospect, but those dynamics were very complex. I mean, Lucchino invented Theo. I mean, he discovered him through Charles Steinberg and all this chain of things. But Theo was handing out press notes in San Diego, and Larry made him go to law school and really groomed him to the job that he ascended to when he was 28 years old. And that became a very complex relationship with guys. They were often mad at each other, and when Theo quit, it's because he thought Larry was trying to pork him in the paper through me and all that. It was very complicated. It didn't end great, but Theo came to the funeral. He honors Larry. He knows what he is, and Theo probably would have been great anywhere. He's so great, but he got the chance to be GM, and that was because Larry Lucchino found him and saw the talent and cultivated that. So that was very complex. That was a biblical sort of relationship. Lucchino and Francona was never good. Tito just didn't. They didn't warm up to each other, and Tito didn't like Larry yelling at him all the time. You saw in the documentary, "This is unacceptable." Getting the phone call middle of the season. I mean, just the hard charging thing. But Tito respected his baseball acumen. That he wasn't. I mean, he wasn't Tom Werner saying we need to make the games closer because the ratings are going down the late innings. So he had respect for that. But yeah, I mean, those three, they all get tremendous credit for what happened in 04 and moving forward until Tito left. So yeah, they were all integral, really important characters in that thing.
Let me shift gears here and talk about this quarterback. Every time, can we get maybe somebody in here like Ricky Henderson to teach this kid how to slide? Because every time he goes down, and the first person I think of every time he gets tackled, his helmet is on sideways. And I think of Major Mudd, who always had his helmet on sideways. So every time he runs, I said, please don't be Major Mudd when you get up. And he gets up, and his the hole that goes over your ear is like right over his nose every time he gets up. I fear for the kid. I really do.
Yeah, I was in Nashville of all places, which is and you're right. He ran 8 times, and I think 7 of them were just straight up without any of that. It's daredevil. It's not wise. He reminds me a little bit of Allen, the kid in Buffalo, but who's bigger and more powerful. But Allen hands out beatings as well as taking them. But May's not quite that big. It's not a long-term strategy. So I think, and Mike, you're a football guy, and so yeah, I don't know who's doing what down there, but it's probably going to be hard to rein that in. But aren't you looking forward to Chicago and this game on Sunday? It's so great that you get to see the number 1 pick, the number 3 pick, and Soldier Field. I think that's a bring your popcorn, man. I'm all about that thing. I love watching this kid play. It just feels like a real quarterback, and I can put up with the mistakes and all this. And I mean, a couple of the interceptions have been bad. The first one, the high one, was real bad, and then in the last game, the last play of the game was bad, and he knew that right away.
Yeah, I'm of the camp. I think he should have been playing since day one. Why is every other quarterback in the league that was drafted starting from game one and not him?
I agree. I would ask Jonathan Kraft that question. The man with all the power, none of the accountability. I would go there on that one.
Why do the networks have to show a shot of the Krafts every game? You don't see the other owner or the other team.
It's just
why do we have to see them every single?
Usually, the president of the network is sitting next to Bob, in the lower chair. Would you like some nuts? Thing like that. But
the lifeguard chair.
Yes.
One of the 3 lines. But that bothers the. And they showed him twice the other day.
Yeah.
Well, he's the chairman of the broadcast. At least he was,
Yeah.
the television committee. So
Yeah.
that makes him a kind of a complicit partner in many ways to all the telecasts.
And one thing I was thinking, and Lynchy, did you go to Kansas City in 19 for that AFC championship?
No, it was so cold. I sent Bob Halloran.
Well, it was cold. And I remember that day getting there early, and we had been with Pat Mahomes Sr. the night before, the greatest expense account of all time, AFC championship, Pat Mahomes, $200 a beer, and it was true, but it wasn't the quarterback, it was the dad. But in any event, walking through those parking lots, 77,000 people, and I'm thinking, in 5 hours, these poor people are all going to be in tears because I've seen this before and I know what's going to happen to them. They've got the better team. They're about ready. They're going to take over the league, but not today, not yet. And it was the same thing. They didn't even get the ball in overtime, the usual just steamroll, didn't see what hit them. And I remember, and that's the pivotal day, an important day in NFL history, because that was really that was it for the Patriots. And they won a Super Bowl 2 weeks later, but 13-3, it was nothing. Yeah. But that day, the old magic was still working, looking across the field and taking over and just beating them by smarts and reputation and all that. And since then, you're down here and they have become what you were. I mean, they're it now.
It's so ironic that the start of that was the Tuck rule.
Yes.
The start of everything was against Oakland here in the snow and the Tuck rule and Vinatieri. Without the Tuck rule, none of this may have happened.
The dynasty built on a lie. And I will also say that the next night, Bob Lobel gets credit for the greatest TV show of all time with Larry and Ted and Bobby Orr. No, it was when the next night after the Tuck rule, when Bob had Vinatieri come back and reenact the kick with an NFL hold with Steve Diossi and NFL holder, NFL long snapper. It blasted one of the light stanchions. It was like the natural was flying all around. The light, it was just, they brought snow in from Storrow Drive, Soldier Field Road, piled it up in the studio. Vinatieri, that would never happen today. It was all
it was a moment. I gotta say,
that was fun. You could. I thought of the Patriots too when they had the coin toss the other night for the overtime game, and Baker Mayfield lost the coin toss.
Yep.
His head back. He said, "It's over. I'm not even going to get on the field."
Yep. It's just that's how it always was. The 28-3 game in Atlanta against Atlanta in Houston, 28-3. The last 16 points, the 2-point conversions were not even contested. They were so back on their heels. It was like each touchdown was going to be 8 points no matter what. There wasn't even an argument. They were in the end zone before they signaled touchdown on the touchdown. They were back in the end zone. It was unbelievable how uncontested those were. And that's how it felt, like you say, the other night. They're going in. See you later.
Absolutely.
And listen, what's uncontested, and I got to bring this in at this time because we're halfway through the time that we have. The uncontested is what Cold Springs RV is bringing you when it comes to campers and trailers and everything new in 2025. That's uncontested. Next year's models, they are arriving every day, uncontested. So you check out the latest in pop-ups and travel trailers, fifth wheels, and motorhomes, all uncontested at Cold Springs RV. The doors are always open and you can freely browse. You want to see the latest in camping, get to Cold Springs RV in Ware, New Hampshire. And you can say where? Well, it's west of Goffstown, which of course is named after Gerald Goff, and it's north of Tingsboro. Uncontested, more online at coldspringsrv.com. I got to say, that it was a very good commercial today, Bob. So thank you very much.
It's great, Bob.
And okay, no, I'm just saying that. Danny has a question. I'm sure Mike has, asked this question of everybody, and Dan's probably been asked it 4 or 5 times already.
He is. So I'm going to. They're building a Lobel Lynchy cruiser, just like the Madden cruiser, and but it's not ready yet. But when it's ready, each one of our guests is going to take it cross country, and we'll fly you back from the West Coast. But you have to pick somebody that you want to ride shotgun with you across the country. Somebody that you may never. It can be live, it can be deceased, can be current, can be any sport. It can be a writer, it can be a musician. So who would you like to just have a conversation with for 6 or 7 days riding cross country in the Lynch cruiser?
Among the living, it'd be Paul McCartney, and among the dead, it'd be John F. Kennedy. There you go.
It's pretty good. We
all I
had,
got.
we had the other day, Chad Finn picked Quincy Jones.
Mhm.
He just passed away, but he picked him about 2 weeks ago, I think.
Yikes.
All right, so
I
why
hope-
Paul McCartney?
I hope Paul McCartney's going to be okay now that you said that. Got me a little concerned now. No, the whole Beatle phenomenon, what that was like. I mean, only 4 people in the world know what that was like, and I just think because he'd be more interesting than Ringo, and we lived it as children, and just the level of fame that was, and just and I just think he's underrated as a songwriter, and where that stuff came from, and I just would have a lot of questions, and I could keep it going for a week. I know I could with that one. Yeah, easy.
And JFK?
Same sort of thing. Just it's a life that was lived with stuff I've either experienced or read about. I mean, he was gone when I was 10 years old, like yourself there, Mike. But I've read a lot about the 40s, the 50s, and 60s, just the war experiences. Carrying that guy swimming a mile or so with the guy on his back, and the growing up thing. His father. Ambassador to England, World War II, all that stuff. And then just living in Charlestown, running for Congress, 1946, all that stuff. I mean, I'd like to go back through that, the Nixon debates and Cuban Missile Crisis, and of course, you'd have to ask a little bit about Marilyn Monroe and things like that, so you get them going, stuff like that. But yeah, I'd just like to know more. I mean, but your bus, man. I mean, everybody. When you say living or dead, man, that opens it up. It's a lot of possibilities. A lot of possibilities.
But when we finally get this thing built, Bob, it's gonna be a good book if we interview everybody that's right. We'll just stay on the West Coast and interview everybody before we fly them back.
Yeah,
It's not a bad idea. Now, Danny won the Taylor Spink Award at the Hall of Fame, and we can call it the Taylor Swift Award when we put it on.
Yep.
Whoever gets the bus ride. But that must have
That's
been quite an
that's-
honor, Danny, going to the Hall of Fame, which brings me to Tiampa. But go ahead, Lynch. You tell them what.
No, we asked Upton who we wanted to ride with, and he picked Taylor Swift.
Well, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that'd be fun. She must have a lot to say. Yeah.
I know she got a word in with Upton, but
So, yeah, I'm listening too. Yeah.
Go ahead, Bob.
No, it's just we
Oh yeah, Louis with Tion. I have a note in the Sunday column about Tion as well. I mean, I'm not of a mind of this, like, Louis didn't want to be there because he was bitter and doesn't want to hear about the Hall of Fame once he's dead, or his family. I hope he gets in, and I hope his family honors that. I'm sure they would. It's such a special thing.
Agreed.
I understand all points of this. I wasn't a big voter in the time he was on the ballot. He never got higher than 31%, I think. And he hasn't done well with these committees. This is the 7th time he's been on a veterans committee. Those committees are very difficult. And as I noted in this week's column, there's 16 people, 16 members of 16 voters. They're Hall of Famers, they're executives, they're 1 or 2 media or historians. And you need to get 3/4. So you need 12 votes. There's 8 candidates, and you can only vote for 3 or less. So the math doesn't work for a lot of people getting in. And he's on a ballot that's got Dave Parker, it's got Steve Garvey. There's 1 or 2 others that are formidable. Hold on a second, I will tell you. It's just not the slam dunk that you would think it would be, because Parker is going to have a lot of guys. He's on a ballot with Dick Allen. You can make a case for Dick Allen or Dave Parker just as well as you can for Louis Tion. Tommy John's on there, so, and once you start splitting up all these votes, and they purposely don't release the names of the voters until like the week before, because they don't want guys like us calling and lobbying them and this and that. And I understand that. But as soon as I get those names, I'll make sure everybody knows them so you can call and lobby them. But, it's liable to be, I mean, Theo could be on a panel like that, or Rich Gossage could be in the panel. I mean, you just don't know who they're going to be. And so it's a hard numbers game for that. And I don't think he'll succeed. And I don't think he's ever been close with those committees. I think he got 2 or 3 votes out of the 12 voters last time. So he's punished for being on bad teams, which is unfair. As we all know, statistically, he's equal to Drysdale or Catfish Hunter. Catfish get in the first ballot. Drysdale took 10 ballots. So Drysdale wasn't a slam dunk either. But it's a very complicated process. But it's a baseball argument. We like those. And the complete games, the shutouts. And we all know here where we live because of the big game pitching. I mean, Schilling had that. Tion had it before. And outside of Gibson, there was no better big game pitcher in his era than Louis Tion. And and I loved him personally. He was such a wonderful man. I never talked about the Hall of Fame with him because I just felt hypocritical because I know I'm a tough mark on that, and it's been a difficult thing. So I hope he gets in, but I don't think he will.
And speaking of Hall of Fame, what about RKK?
So that's their process. The NFL is so complicated. The Pro Football Hall of Fame. I mean, no one can follow it. But they have separated contributors from coaches. That's his friend. That's really good. And I'm always suspicious because the Hall of Fame needs money, and it wouldn't surprise me if a bag of cash was orchestrated to make sure those categories were separate. So he's not up against Tom Coughlin or Mike Shanahan or whatever. That's good. Because you got your players and then you have your contributors, and the coaches and contributors used to be together. Only one contributor gets in now, but one coach and is not necessarily gets advanced to the final, which is done at the Super Bowl before, and that's the bloody smoke-filled room and bare knuckle brawling and all that stuff. You need advocates. I think he's got a good chance to get in because I think he's up. Who's the guy in Buffalo who was the owner? Ralph Wilson. He might be on it. There's 1 or 2 names like that.
Bud Adams.
Bud Adams. Yeah, Bud Adams, I believe. And so
I think there's a Rooney on there too. I'm not sure.
Well, that would be bad for Bob. I don't think there is. I mean, I hope not for Bob's sake, because the Rooneys and the Maras are always going to get ahead of him in this area. But what grates Adam is Jerry Jones getting in, and that may go to my bag of cash theory as well. So, but he did get in, and that frosts Bob in a big way. And of course, they try to pretend that it's not important to him, which is, again, it's a big joke.
Are you surprised to learn that Stacey James had spent so much effort trying to get Robert in?
I was not surprised to learn that, and Stacey's very loyal to Bob, and I understand that. I mean, they've been good for each other. And Stacey's a very loyal, hardworking employee. He takes this stuff very seriously. He really cares about the Patriot Hall of Fame. I mean, he can get passionate about all this stuff. So good for him. And I just hope that doesn't, because it became public with the ESPN story about all the gymnastics that were being done on Bob's behalf, that doesn't hurt him with the voters. I think his name will be put forward. I think he will be the one of the 8 or 9 contributors that are put forward. I think he'll be the one that will emerge to the final vote. But when you see that name get put forward, it doesn't mean he's in. There have been years when no contributor came out of the bare knuckle brawls at the Super Bowl, and but I think it's, you could easily make a case. Considering who else is in there, he deserves to be in there.
It's like fingernail. When I hear that sentence, when you say that, just like fingernails on a blackboard, I cringe, and I just think you should, have your work stand on its own, and I just don't think you have to be campaigning, going 24/7 to try to get into this thing. I don't know, that bothers me, but I probably
if he had to stand on his own awards and his own accomplishments, what would they be? Keeping football in New England?
I mean, he certainly, although of course he threatened to take him to Hartford and held him up for that, right? So that would be one thing. And he wants people to think he invented the Patriots, which is very disrespectful to the Sullivans. All the timelines of all their propaganda is always starting in 94, this and that. Of course, Parcells gets erased from history like the Kremlin, who, Parcells put all the good stuff in place before Bob Kraft bought the team. And that's a disgrace that's not honored in any way over there. And that's the kind of pettiness that bugs me about it. And I don't like to see that rewarded. So I'm with you, Lynchy, on that. It's a very needy situation, and yeah, it should allow it to stand on its own. But they've never allowed anything to stand on its own. I mean, they call press conferences for every good deed. It's just what they do. You know that.
Sure.
So you guys both know that. You guys got the calls. And Bob, you worked at the station that has gone complete, TASS news agency, Baghdad Bob for the whole operation there, which is, it's just no longer. They've just forfeited all objectivity, complete bag job partnership, which is good. I understand the money part of it, but it invalidates a lot of good work that's been done too.
I want to go back to. Can we leave this subject, Lynchy, or do you want to continue a little bit?
Bob, you're the captain of the ship.
No, not really. That's what that's what the guy next to the Titanic guy who said. Famous quote. The one thing about jumping back to the comeback and that whole series about 2004, 20 years ago, one thing that jumps out in a social vein is that 20 years later, it's a much different game, played with much different intensity, cared by much different people, that it's just not what it was. Few things are, I get that, but it does not, is not the ruler these days. And we know what the ruler is in the NFL. But did it have to be one supplanting the other? Because it seems like the 2004, the comeback series reminded us of how important and how intense it was for all of us, and how unimportant and unintense it was now.
Yeah, I mean there was an inevitability about baseball's fade, and baseball faded. You go back to the 70s and 80s and 90s. I mean, it's been a pretty gradual thing, and football exponentially bigger and bigger. And of course, but yeah, the tipping point certainly in our region is right after, because 04, 05, the Red Sox were. I mean, the Patriots had already won one and then two and then three, but the Red Sox Yankee thing was the zenith in my view. It was still huge. It was never going to stay like that, but so it's not even close now. Of course, I mean, I think that like 6 times as many people watch the Super Bowl as the World Series. I mean, it's just like you're talking about NFL as king of all, and the betting, the fantasy, the violence, the TV. It's perfect. It's the same square we're looking at. It's on TV,
and it's in the same time frame.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the perfect product. You can't mess it up. So good for them. But yeah, it's sad to see how far the baseball players were really good this year, and they had better ratings, and there were star players, and it was a better product. So in the pitch clock shaved a half hour off the game. So all those things are good. And hopefully locally they get some of it back too, but it'll never be what it was in 04, 05. We're never going to go back to that.
That was the highlight, I think, of my sports life. I mean, there was nothing like that, because Super Bowl is one game. I mean, this is divisional round, or wild card divisional round, ALCS, and then the World Series was just gravy. When whoever won, I mean, the world champion was the AL champion, in that year. But there was nothing like that. I mean, people going to gravestones, and it just everyone's got a personal story or stories.
And the fact that it came at the expense of the Yankees. I mean, 150 years of 7-game series. It's only been done once, and it's Boston against New York after what happened in 03, after 86 years, after Bucky Dent. We can go down the line here. No need to do it. But yeah, easy for me to say it was the greatest sports story ever in New England. I think, the Miracle on Ice is its own thing, but this was talked about for eight decades. So yeah, the build-up just made it, and the fact that it was New York, way over.
Go ahead, Bob.
We were just fortunate to have been there. We've covered a lot of things today between the comeback and.
Yes, we have.
The one thing I didn't ask you about was the picture when you were 24 years old working for the Baltimore paper in the Orioles locker room. Interviewing Reggie Jackson.
I have that right here. I'll get it for you.
Yeah, it was really pretty unbelievable. I didn't explain how it showed up and what impact it had in Groton, Massachusetts.
There it is, right there.
Young Jackson, and
kind
The
of
guy
hard.
behind the ABC microphone is Dan.
Yeah, it's all blacked out. But anyway, that's me there. But yeah, it was.
You look the
I
same.
was. I mean, people watched the World Series live then, and they watched it on TV, and that shot, because you guys have all been in those crowded locker rooms. In that particular moment, Reggie had hit the 3 home runs, and the camera, and then he started talking about all of his brands and his agents and his high school teachers, and he just loves to talk about himself. So I got stuck in there, and nobody was moving, and to the point people were calling my parents' house. Oh, yeah, Danny's on TV. What a thing. And I was still on TV when they went to check because nobody had moved. But yeah, that's just, I was 24 years old. It was a big thrill to be covering an event like that. And now we're all so much older. And Reggie and I, we still tease about that because he likes watching himself as well. So there you go.
The only time I can remember anything like that was when Roger Clemens got ejected in Oakland for swearing at who was it, Cooney?
Terry Cooney, very good.
Terry Cooney. And he came out in the locker room, and there were the same, herd of cows mooing, and all the microphones around. You get caught in the middle of that scrum. It's pretty amazing. It's things you don't forget. I'm sure Lynch, you had plenty of those too.
Well, that day I was sitting. That was a noontime Oakland start, a 3 o'clock start back here, and I'm sitting next to Clark Booth, and we're up in the auxiliary press box. And Clark as soon as the game starts, he said, I was with Gammons last night, and he's telling me he thinks that Clemens is going to become unhinged today. He's really tightly wound, and something is going to happen to Clemens today. And sure enough, there it goes, And I don't know I can't remember what inning it was when he got tossed, but the words from Clark Booth via Peter Gammons are ringing in my ears. I'm watching this thing unfold. The Cardinal, another Holy Cross guy. Here we go. All roads travel through Holy Cross. Clark Booth, Holy Cross.
So I'm going to edit that story only that because Gammons and I are both from Groton, Massachusetts, but and you're going to think I'm making this up, but that was me because I drove over with Jackie McMullen and Vince Doria, whoever our boss was, 88. No, it was Don Squire, Vince Doria. There was 4 of us in the car, and I had a dream that he was going to be carried off the field horizontally, and I didn't know about the ninja. My dream didn't include the Ninja Turtle or the Eye Black or but I said he's and what we would now call roid rage, whatever. And when that happened, because we were in the, like you say, we were outside upstairs.
Yeah.
And Booth literally ran over to where I was, like holding up. He's like, he thought I was the devil because of the demonic powers of having seen the future there when that happened. But yeah, that was myself. And yeah, Jackie can vouch for that as well. She's still around to do, but and of course Clark Booth, as you know, the greatest wordsmith, the greatest sports guy, man's man. I loved him, and he was a wonderful guy. And you were blessed to have all those years working with him at 5.
I certainly was. I had to carry a thesaurus in my briefcase at all times because I said, "What was that? What was that word he just said?" He just
no one like him.
We went out to Anaheim, and he puts a piece together, and it started like this: Anaheim, interwoven ribbons of concrete with a Taco Bell on every corner. This is Anaheim. That's how it started. And who would write interwoven ribbons of concrete? And only he would be able to come up with words like that.
Makes me want to hear more. Keep going if you can remember the rest. That's good.
That's all I got.
You did a great job today, Lynchy. And Danny, you were fantastic. We covered a lot of subjects.
Oh, one final question. Are you fearful of the sale of the Celtics?
That's a good question, Lynchy. I mean, they're good at keeping secrets, so I feel like it's going to be something that we aren't prepared for. It was like that when they bought the team, when they announced they're selling. People just they hold secrets very well. Brad Stevens coming here, nothing ever leaks out ahead of time. So I don't know. I mean, if it's Steve Patliuka, I think I'll be comfortable. If it's somebody I've never heard of, yeah, I'll be nervous. And I don't think there'll be a new arena attached to it. I don't think Wick's going to be allowed to stick around and be the governor while someone else owns the team. So I think it's going to be it's change. I'm not an agent of change like many of us older guys. So yeah, the closest thing to continuity would be Pagliuca. So that'd make me more comfortable.
Yeah, I agree. And Bob, you're looking much better than you did the other day. For those of you who are just checking in, Bob had
Perfectly.
golf is a contact sport. I guess that's all I'm going to say.
It's good.
But you're looking better. And
Unfortunately, the contact is not between the club and the ball. Danny, great job. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, guys.
Can't thank you enough. Thanks so much. Awesome.
Take care, guys.
Talk soon. Shaughnessy was our guest today, and hope you follow us on UnAnchoredBoston.com.
Hey, thanks a lot, Danny. That was